A female of the common earwig in a threat pose. Zoraptera is relatively small compared to the other orders of Insecta, with only about 2,000 species, 3 suborders and 15 families, including the extinct suborders Archidormaptera and Eodormaptera with their extinct families Protodiplatyidae, Dermapteridae, Seminovialidae, and Pteronodermatidae. The phylogeny of the Zoraptera is still debated. 4756 Thus, these former suborders were eliminated in the most recent higher classification. Relationship with humans. Earwigs are fairly abundant and are found in many areas around the world. There is no evidence that they transmit diseases to humans or other animals. Their pincers are commonly believed to be dangerous, but in reality, even the curved pincers of males cause little or no harm to humans. 57 Earwigs have been rarely known to crawl into the ears of humans. 58 And they do not lay eggs inside the human body or human brain as is often claimed. 59, 60. There is a debate whether earwigs are harmful or beneficial to crops, as they eat both the foliage and the insects eating such foliage, such as aphids, though it would take a large population to do considerable damage. The common earwig eats a wide variety of plants, and also a wide variety of foliage, including the leaves and petals. They have been known to cause economic losses in fruit and vegetable crops. Some examples are the flowers, hops, red raspberries, 61, and corn crops in Germany, and in the south of France, earwigs have been observed feeding on peaches and apricots. The earwigs attacked mature plants and made cup-shaped bite marks 3 to 11 m, 1, 8-7/16 in diameter. 62. In literature and folklore. One of the primary characters of James Joyce's experimental novel Finnegan's Wake is referred to by the initials, HCE, which primarily stand for Humphrey Chimpton Earwicker, a reference to earwigs. Earwig imagery is found throughout the book, and also occurs in the author's Ulysses in the Laestrygonians chapter. 63. Oscar Cook wrote the short story Appearing in Switch on the Light, April, 1931, A Century of Creepy Stories 1934, Pan Horror 2, 1960 Boomerang, which was later adapted by Rod Serling for the Night Gallery TV series episode, The Caterpillar. 64 It tells the tale of the use of an earwig as a murder instrument applied by a man obsessed with the wife of an associate. Thomas Hood discusses the myth of earwigs finding shelter in the human ear in the poem, Love Laying, by saying the following: 'Tis vain to talk of hopes and fears, and hope the least reply to win, from any maid that stops her ears, in dread of earwigs creeping in. 65 In some parts of rural England the earwig is called battle twig, which is present in Alfred, Lord Tennyson's poem The Spinster's Sweet Arts. 'Twere as bad as battle twig ere I, my own blue chamber to me. 66 In some regions of Japan, earwigs are called chinpo basami, or chinpo kiri, which means penis cutter. Kenta Takada, a Japanese cultural entomologist, has inferred that these names may be derived from the fact that earwigs were seen around old Japanese-style toilets. 67 In Roald Dahl's children's book George's Marvelous Medicine, George's grandma encourages him to eat unwashed celery with beetles and earwigs still on them. A big fat earwig is very tasty, Grandma said, licking her lips. But you've got to be very quick, my dear, when you put one of those in your mouth. It has a pair of sharp nippers on its back end, and if it grabs your tongue with those, it never lets go. So you've got to bite the earwig first, chop chop, before it bites you. Plecoptera. Plecoptera is an order of insects, commonly known as stoneflies. Some 3,500 species are described worldwide, with new species still being discovered. Stoneflies are found worldwide, except Antarctica. 2. Stoneflies are believed to be one of the most primitive groups of Neoptera, with close relatives identified from the Carboniferous and Lower Permian geological periods, while true stoneflies are known from fossils only a bit younger. Their modern diversity, however, apparently is of Mesozoic origin. 3. Plecoptera are found in both the southern and northern hemispheres, and the populations are quite distinct, although the evolutionary evidence suggests species may have crossed the equator on a number of occasions before once again becoming geographically isolated. 3. 4. All species of Plecoptera are intolerant of water pollution, and the presence of their nymphs in a stream or still water is usually an indicator of good or excellent water quality. 5. Description and ecology. Nymph of a golden stonefly, Plecoptera, Perlidae. Dinotoperla imago, adult Gripopterygidea, Dinotoperlinae. Stoneflies have a generalized anatomy, with few specialized features compared to other insects. They have simple mouthparts with chewing mandibles, long, multiple segmented antennae, large compound eyes, and 2 or 3 ocelli. The legs are robust, with each ending in 2 claws. The abdomen is relatively soft, and may include remnants of the nymphal gills even in the adult. Both nymphs and adults have long, paired cerci projecting from the tip of their abdomens. 6. The name, Plecoptera, literally means braided wings, from the ancient Greek plekein, plekein, to braid, and terex, wing. 7. This refers to the complex venation of their 2 pairs of wings, which are membranous and fold flat over their backs. Stoneflies are generally not strong flyers, and some species are entirely wingless. A few wingless species, such as the Lake Tahoe benthic stonefly Capnia, lacustra, note 1, or Bicolopterla, are the only known insects, perhaps with the exception of hollowbaits, that are exclusively aquatic from birth to death. 9. Some true water bugs, Nepomorpha, may also be fully aquatic for their entire lives, but can leave the water to travel. The nymphs, technically, naiads, are aquatic and live in the benthic zone of well-oxygenated lakes and streams. A few species found in New Zealand and nearby islands have terrestrial nymphs, but even these inhabit only very moist environments. The nymphs physically resemble wingless adults, but often have external gills, which may be present on almost any part of the body. Nymphs can acquire oxygen via diffusing through the exoskeleton, or through gills located on behind the head, on the thorax, or around the anus. 10. Due to their nymphs' requirement for well-oxygenated water, the species is very sensitive to water pollution. This makes them important indicators for water quality. 11. Most species are herbivorous as nymphs, feeding on submerged leaves and benthic algae, but many are hunters of other aquatic arthropods. 6. Plecoptera. Temporal range, Permian recent. Eustenia sp. Scientific classification domain, Eukaryota kingdom, Animalia phylum, Arthropoda class, Insecta unranked Dicondylia subclass, Pterygota infraclass, Neoptera cohort, Polyneoptera. Order, Plecoptera. Burmeister, 1839. Mostly Arctopolaria. See text life cycle. The female can lay up to 1,000 eggs. It will fly over the water and drop the eggs in the water. It also may hang on a rock or branch. Eggs are covered in a sticky coating which allows them to adhere to rocks without being swept away by swift currents. 12. The eggs typically take 2 to 3 weeks to hatch, but some species undergo diapause, with the eggs remaining dormant throughout a dry season, and hatching only when conditions are suitable. 6. The insects remain in the nymphal form for 1 to 4 years, depending on species, and undergo from 12 to 36 molts before emerging and becoming terrestrial as adults. 13. Before becoming adults, nymphs will leave the water, attach to a fixed surface and molt one last time. The adults generally only survive for a few weeks, and emerge only during specific times of the year when resources are optimal. Some do not feed at all, but those that do are herbivorous. 6. Adults are not strong flyers and generally stay near the stream or lake they hatched from. 12. Systematics. Traditionally, the stoneflies were divided into 2 suborders, the Antarctopolaria, or Archipelaria, and the Arctopolaria. However, the former simply consists of the 2 most basal superfamilies of stoneflies, which do not seem to be each other's closest relatives. Thus, the Antarctopolaria are not considered a natural group despite some claims to the contrary. 14. The Arctopolaria, though, have been divided into 2 infraorders, the Euhalignatha or Philopalpia and the Cystalignatha also called Setipalpia or Subulipalpia. This corresponds to the phylogeny 15, with one exception. The Scopiuridae must be considered a basal family in the Arctopolaria, not assignable to any of the infraorders. Alternatively, the Scopiuridae were placed in an unranked clade, Halignatha, together with the Euhalignatha, meaning roughly advanced Halignatha, but the Scopiuridae do not appear significantly closer to the Euhalignatha than to the Cystalignatha. In addition, not adopting the clades Antarctopolaria and Halignatha allows for a systematic layout of the Plecoptera that adequately reproduces phylogeny, while retaining the traditional ranked. Taxa. 3:16. Plecoptera. Embioptera. The order Embioptera, commonly known as web spinners or fruit spinners, 2, are a small group of mostly tropical and subtropical insects, classified under the subclass Pterygota. The order has also been called Embiodia or Embiodina. 3. More than 400 species in 11 families have been described, the oldest known fossils of the group being from the mid-Jurassic. Species are very similar in appearance, having long, flexible bodies, short legs, and only males having wings. Web spinners are gregarious, living subsocially in galleries of fine silk which they spin from glands on their forelegs. Members of these colonies are often related females and their offspring. Adult males do not feed and die soon after mating. Males of some species have wings and are able to disperse, whereas the females remain near where they were hatched. Newly mated females may vacate the colony and found a new one nearby. Others may emerge to search for a new food source to which the galleries can be extended, but in general, the insects rarely venture from their galleries. Name and etymology. The name Embioptera, lively wings, comes from Greek embios, meaning lively, and pteron, meaning wing, a name that has not been considered to be particularly descriptive for this group of flyers, perhaps instead referring to their remarkable speed of movement both forward and backward. 5. The common name web spinner comes from the insect's unique tarsi on their front legs, which produce multiple strands of silk. They use the silk to make web-like galleries in which they live. 6. Early entomologists considered the web spinners to be a group within the termites or the neuropterans, and a variety of group names have been suggested including Adenopoda, Embidaria, Embiaria, and Aetioptera. In 1909 Gunther Enderlein used the name Embiodina, which was used widely for a while. Edward S. Ross suggested a new name, Embiomorpha, in 2007. The currently most widely accepted ordinal name is Embioptera, suggested by Arthur Shipley in 1904. 7. Evolution. Fossil history. Fossils of web spinners are rare. 8. The group probably first appeared during the Jurassic. The oldest known, Cynembia rossi and Jurembia ningshengensis, both in a new family Cynembioidae created for them, are from the Middle Jurassic of Inner Mongolia, and were described in 2009. The female of J. ningshengensis had wings, supporting Ross's proposal that both sexes of ancestral Embioptera were winged. 9. Species such as Admetoclothoda orthotens, possibly the first fossil member of the Clothididae to be discovered, sometimes thought to be a primitive family, have been found in mid-Cretaceous amber from northern Myanmar. Lidoclastes delicatus oligotomidi has been found in the same locality. 10th, the largest number of fossils have been found in mid-Eocene Baltic amber and early Miocene Dominican amber. 8 flattened compression fossils that have been interpreted as being web spinners have been found from the Eocene, Oligocene shales of Florissant, Colorado. 8. Phylogeny. Over 400 Embiopteran species in 11 families have been described worldwide, the largest proportion of which inhabit tropical regions. 1, 4, 6, 11. It is estimated that there may be around 2,000 species extant today. 12. The external phylogeny of Embioptera has been debated, with the Polyneopteran order controversially classed in 2007 as a sister group to both Zoraptera, angel insects, 413, and Phasmatodea, stick insects. 14-15. The position of the Embioptera within the Polyneoptera suggested by a phylogenetic analysis carried out in 2012 by Miller et al., combining morphological and molecular evidence, is shown in the cladogram. 1. Embioptera. Temporal range: Jurassic, recent. Note Oligotoma nitens. Scientific classification domain: Eukaryota kingdom, Animalia phylum, Arthropoda class, Insecta cohort, Polyneoptera. Order: Embioptera. Part of Miller et al.'s phylogenetic analysis examined 96 morphological characters and 5 genes for 82 species across the order. Miller et al.'s phylogenetic analysis examined 96 morphological characters and 5 genes for 82 species across the order. 4 families were found to be robustly monophyletic in whatever way the phylogeny was analyzed: parsimony, maximum likelihood, or Bayesian, Clothididae, Anasembiidae, Oligotomidae, and Teratembiidae. The internal phylogeny of the group is not yet fully resolved. Miller et al.'s phylogenetic analysis examined 96 morphological characters and 5 genes for 82 species across the order. 4 families were found to be robustly monophyletic in whatever way the phylogeny was analyzed: parsimony, maximum likelihood, or Bayesian, Clothididae, Anasembiidae, Oligotomidae, and Teratembiidae. Theembiidae, Coleoptera, and Australembeidae remain monophyletic in one or more of the 3 analyses, but are broken up in others, so their status remains uncertain. Either the Clothididae under parsimony analysis or Australembeidae under Bayesian analysis is the sister taxon to the remaining Embioptera taxa, so no single phylogenetic tree can be taken as definitive from this work. 1. Teratembiidae Krauss, 1911. Synonyms: Embiids. Description: Drawings of Embia major winged male, male nymph and adult female, from the Himalayas, by Augustus Daniel Ims, 1913. All web spinners have a remarkably similar body form, although they do vary in coloration and size. The majority are brown or black, ranging to pink or reddish shades in some species, and range in length from 15 to 20 millimeters, 0.6 to 0.8 in. The body form of these insects is completely specialized for the silk tunnels and chambers in which they reside, being cylindrical, long, narrow and highly flexible. 16. The head has projecting mouthparts with chewing mandibles. The compound eyes are kidney-shaped, there are no ocelli, and the thread-like antennae are long, with up to 32 segments. 17, 18. The antennae are flexible, so they do not become entangled in the silk, and the wings have a crosswise crease, allowing them to fold forwards and enable the male to dart backwards without the wings snagging the fabric. 6. The first segment of the thorax is small and narrow, while the second and third are larger and broader, especially in the males, where they include the flight muscles. 19. All the females and nymphs are wingless, whereas adult males can be either winged or wingless depending on species. 19. The wings, where present, occur as 2 pairs that are similar in size and shape, long and narrow, with relatively simple venation. These wings operate using basic hydraulics. Pre-flight, chambers, sinus veins, within the wings inflate with hemolymph blood, making them rigid enough for use. On landing, these chambers deflate and the wings become flexible, folding back against the body. Wings can also fold forwards over the body, and this, along with the flexibility, allows easy movement through the narrow silk galleries, either forwards or backwards, without resulting in damage. 19. The male's wings are stiffened and inflated as hemolymph fills sinus veins for flight. A crosswise crease allows them to fold in half to prevent damage when the insect runs backwards in a gallery. 6. In both males and females the legs are short and sturdy, with an enlarged basal tarsomere on the front pair, containing the silk-producing glands. The mid and hind legs also have 3 tarsal segments with the hind femur enlarged to house the strong tibial depressor muscles that enable rapid reverse movement. 20-21. It is these silk glands on the front tarsi that distinguish the Embiopterans. Other noteworthy characteristics of this group include 3-jointed tarsi, simple wing venation with few cross veins, prognathous, head with forward-facing mouthparts, and absence of ocelli, simple eyes. 4-22. The abdomen has 10 segments, with a pair of cerci on the final segment. These cerci, made up of two segments and asymmetric in length especially in the males, are highly sensitive to touch, and allow the animal to navigate while moving backwards through the gallery tunnels, which are too narrow to allow the insect to turn round. 17. Because morphology is so similar between taxa, species identification is extremely difficult. For this reason, the main form of taxonomic identification used in the past has been close observation of distinctive copulatory structures of males, although this method is now thought by some entomologists and taxonomists as giving insufficient classification detail. 11. Although males never eat during their adult stage, they do have mouthparts similar to those of the females. These mouthparts are used to hold on to the female during copulation. 23. Life cycle. The eggs hatch into nymphs that resemble small, wingless adults. After a short period of parental care, the nymphs undergo hemimetabolosis, incomplete metamorphosis, molting a total of 4 times before reaching adult form. Adult males never eat, and leave the home colony almost immediately to find a female and mate. Those males that cannot fly often mate with females in nearby colonies, meaning their chosen mates are often siblings or close relatives. In some species, the female eats the male after mating, but in any event, the male does not survive for long. A few species are parthenogenetic, meaning they can produce viable offspring without fertilization of the eggs. This phenomenon occurs when a female is, for whatever reason, unable to find a male to mate with, thus giving her and her species reproductive security at all times. 17. After molting and mating, the female lays a single batch of eggs either within the existing gallery, or wanders away to start a new colony elsewhere. Because the females are flightless, their potential for dispersal is limited to the distance a female can walk. 8. Behavior and ecology. Behavior. Most, if not all, Embiopteran species are gregarious but subsocial. 4. Typically, adult females show maternal care of their After a short period of parental care, the eggs hatch into nymphs that resemble small, wingless adults. After a short period of parental care, the nymphs undergo hemimetabolosis, incomplete metamorphosis, molting a total of 4 times before reaching adult form. Adult males never eat, and leave the home colony almost immediately to find a female and mate. Those males that cannot fly often mate with females in nearby colonies, meaning their chosen mates are often siblings or close relatives. In some species, the female eats the male after mating, but in any event, the male does not survive for long. A few species are parthenogenetic, meaning they can produce viable offspring without fertilization of the eggs. This phenomenon occurs when a female is, for whatever reason, unable to find a male to mate with, thus giving her and her species reproductive security at all times. 17. After molting and mating, the female lays a single batch of eggs either within the existing gallery, or wanders away to start a new colony elsewhere. Because the females are flightless, their potential for dispersal is limited to the distance a female can walk. 8. Behavior and ecology. Behavior. Most, if not all, Embiopteran species are gregarious but subsocial. 4. Typically, adult females show maternal care of their eggs and young, and often live in large colonies with other adult females, creating and sharing the webbing cover that helps to protect them against predators. The advantages of living in these colonies outweigh the disadvantage that results from the increased parasite load that this lifestyle entails. 8. Although some species breed once a year, or even once in 2 years, others breed more frequently, with Aposthonia ceylonica producing 4 or 5 batches of eggs in a 12-month period. 6. Maternal care starts with the placement of the eggs. Some species attach batches of eggs to the web structure with silk. Others form the eggs into rows in grooves excavated in the bark. Others fix them in rows with a cement formed from saliva, while many species bury them in a mass of silk, even incorporating other materials into the covering. 8. The majority of Embiopterans guard their eggs, some actually standing over them, the main exception being species such as Zoraptera calypso that scatter their eggs widely. The main threat to the eggs is from egg parasitoids, which can attack whole batches of undefended eggs. 8. At this time the adult females become very territorial and aggressive to other individuals with whom they previously lived in harmony. 3 different types of vibratory signals are used to deter other Embiopterans that approach the eggs too closely, and the intruder usually retires. 8. After the eggs have hatched, the mothers resume their gregarious behavior. In some species, they continue caring for their young for several days after hatching, and in a few, this parental care even involves the female feeding the nymphs with portions of chewed up leaf litter and other foods. 24. The parthenogenetic Rigodochir virgo incorporates scraps of lichen into the silk wrapping the eggs, and this may be eaten by newly hatched nymphs. Perhaps because individuals of this species are so closely related, the adults spin silk together and move around in coordinated groups. Even in species that provide no further parental care, the nymphs in the colony benefit from the greater silk-producing power of the adults and the extra protection that the more copious silk covering brings. 8. Subsociality is a trade-off for the female, as the energy and time that is exerted in caring for her young is rewarded by giving them a much greater chance of surviving and carrying on her genetic lineage. Some species do share galleries with more than one adult, however, most groups consist of one adult female and her offspring. 25. When web spinners clean their antennae, they may differ in their behavior from other insects which typically make use of the forelegs to either clean or bring the antennae toward the mouthparts for manipulation. Web spinners, as observed in the genus Ologembia, instead fold the antennae under the body and clean the antennae as they are held between the mouthparts and the substrate. 26. When constructing their silken galleries, web spinners use characteristic cyclic movements of their forelegs, alternating actions with the left and right legs while also moving. There are variations in the choreography of these movements across species. 27. Silk web production. Embiopterans produce a silk thread similar to that produced by the silkworm, Bombyx mori. The silk is produced in spherical secretory glands in the swollen tarsi, lower leg segments, of the forelimbs, and can be produced by both adults and larvae. Unlike Bombyx mori and other silk-producing and spinning members of both Lepidoptera and Hymenoptera, which only have one pair of silk glands per individual, some species of embiid are estimated to have up to 300 silk glands, 150 in each forelimb. 4. These glands are linked to a bristle-like cuticular process known as a silk ejector. 28. And their exceedingly high numbers allow individuals to spin large amounts of silk very quickly, creating extensive galleries. The silk web is produced throughout all stages of the Embiopteran lifespan. 21. And requires modest energy output. 29. Web spinner silk is among the thinnest of all animal silks, being in most species about 90 to 100 nanometers in diameter. 30. The finest of any insect are those of the web spinner Opisthonia gurnei, averaging about 65 nanometers in diameter. 31. Each thread consists of a protein core folded into pleated beta sheets, with a water-repellent coating rich in waxy alkanes. 30. Galleries. Web on a stone wall. The galleries produced by Embiopterans are tunnels and chambers woven from the silk they produce. These woven constructions can be found on substrates such as rocks and the bark of trees, or in leaf litter. 29. Some species camouflage their galleries by decorating the outer layers with bits of leaf litter or other materials to match their surroundings. The galleries are essential to their life cycle, maintaining moisture in their environment, and also offering protection from predators and the elements while foraging, breeding and simply existing. Embiopterans only leave the gallery complex in search of a mate, or when females explore the immediate area in search of a new food source. 16. Web spinners continually extend their galleries to reach new food sources, and expand their existing galleries as they grow in size. The insects spin silk by moving their forelegs back and forth over the substrate, and rotating their bodies to create a cylindrical, silk-lined tunnel. Older galleries have multiple laminate layers of silk. Each gallery complex contains several individuals, often descended from a single female, and forms a maze-like structure, extending from a secure retreat into whatever vegetable food matter is available nearby. The size and complexity of the colony vary between species, and they can be very extensive in those species that live in hot and humid climates. 17. Diet. The Embiopteran diet varies between species, with available food sources changing with varying habitat. The nymphs and adult females feed on plant litter, bark, moss, algae and lichen. They are generalist herbivores. During his research, Ross maintained a number of species in the laboratory on a diet of lettuce and dry oak leaves. Adult males do not eat at all, dying soon after mating. 6. Parasites and predators. The Scleragibidae are a small family of aculate wasps that are specialist parasites of Embiopterans. The wasp lays an egg on the abdomen of a nymph. The wasp larva emerges and attaches itself to the host's body, consuming the host's tissues as it grows. It eventually forms a cocoon and drops off the carcass. A neotropical tachnid fly, Paramaya embiophaga, 32, and a braconid wasp species in the genus Saracobracon, 33, are known to be parasitoids of adult Embioptera. A few scelionid wasps in the tribe Embidobini are egg parasitoids of the Embioptera. 34. A protozoan parasite in Italy effectively sterilizes males, forcing the remaining female population to become parthenogenetic. These parasites and agents of disease may put evolutionary pressure on Embiopterans to live more socially. 6. Adult web spinners are vulnerable when they emerge from their galleries, and are preyed on by birds, geckos, ants and spiders. They have been observed being attacked by owlfly larvae. Birds may pull sheets of silk off the galleries to expose their prey, ants may cut holes to gain entry and harvestmen may pierce the silk to feed on the web spinners inside. 6. Associates. Another group of associates inside the galleries are bugs in the family Plecoptera. Whether these are feeding on Embiopteran eggs or larvae, on mites and other residents of the gallery, or are scavenging is unclear. The Embiopteran Opisthonia ceylonica has been found living inside a colony of the Indian cooperative spider, probably feeding on algae growing on the spider sheetweb, and 2 web spinner species have been discovered living in the outer covering of termites' nests, where their silk galleries may protect them from attack. 6. Distribution and habitat. Embiopterans are distributed worldwide, and are found on every continent except Antarctica, with the highest density and diversity of species being in tropical regions. 19. Some common species have been accidentally transported to other parts of the world, while many native species are unobtrusive and yet to be detected. Some species live underground, are concealed under rocks or behind sections of loose bark. Others live out in the open, either swathed in sheets of white or blue silk, or hidden in less conspicuous silken tubes, on the ground, on the trunks of trees or on the surface of granite rocks. 8. Largely restricted to warmer locations, web spinners are found as far north as the state of Virginia in the United States, 38 degrees north, and as high as 3,500 meters, 11,500 feet, in Ecuador. 6. They were absent from Britain until 2019, when Opisthonia ceylonica, a Southeast Asian species, was found in a glasshouse at the RHS Garden, Wisley. Zoraptera. The insect order Zoraptera, commonly known as angel insects, contains small and soft-bodied insects with two forms: winged with wings sheddable as in termites, dark and with eyes compound, and ocelli, simple, or wingless, pale and without eyes or ocelli. They have a characteristic 9-segmented beaded, maniliform antenna. They have mouthparts adapted for chewing and are mostly found under bark, in dry wood or in leaf litter. 1. Winged fossil of They have a characteristic 9-segmented Zoraptera. The insect order Zoraptera, commonly known as angel insects, contains small and soft-bodied insects with two forms: winged with wings sheddable as in termites, dark and with eyes compound, and ocelli, simple, or wingless, pale and without eyes or ocelli. They have a characteristic 9-segmented beaded, maniliform antenna. They have mouthparts adapted for chewing and are mostly found under bark, in dry wood or in leaf litter. 1. Winged fossil of Zoratypus hirsutus from the late Cretaceous. Cenomanian, aged Burmese amber, around 99 million years old. Description: Zoratypus sp. The name Zoraptera, given by Filippo Silvestri in 1913, 2, is misnamed and potentially misleading. Zor is Greek for pure and aptera means wingless. Pure wingless clearly does not fit the winged alate forms, which were discovered several years after the wingless forms had been described. The members of this order are small insects, 3 mm (0.12 in) or less in length, that resemble termites in appearance and in their gregarious behavior. They are short and swollen in appearance. They belong to the hemimetabolous insects. They possess mandibulated biting mouthparts, short chaircheek usually one segment only, and short antennae with 9 segments. The abdomen is segmented in 11 sections. 3. The maxillary palps have 5 segments, labial palps 3, in both the most distal segment is enlarged. They have 6 Malpighian tubules, and their abdominal ganglia have fused into 2 separate ganglionic complexes. 4. Immature nymphs resemble small adults. Each species shows polymorphism. Most individuals are the apteris form or morph, with no wings, no eyes, and no or little pigmentation. A few females and even fewer males are in the alate form with relatively large membranous wings that can be shed at a basal fracture line. Alates also have compound eyes and ocelli, and more pigmentation. This polymorphism can be observed already as 2 forms of nymphs. Wingspan can be up to 7 mm (0.28 in), and the wings can be shed spontaneously. When observed, wings are paddle-shaped and have simple venation. 3. Under good conditions the blind and wingless form predominates, but if their surroundings become too tough, they produce offspring which develop into winged adults with eyes. These winged offspring are then able to disperse and establish new colonies in areas with more resources. Once established, future generations are once again born blind and wingless. 5. Zoraptera. Temporal range. Zoratypus from Los Bancos, Pichincha, Ecuador. Scientific classification domain: Eukaryota kingdom, Animalia phylum, Arthropoda class, Insecta subclass, Pterygoda infraclass, Neoptera cohort, Polyneoptera. Order: Zoraptera. Phylogeny. The phylogenetic relationship of the order remains controversial and elusive. At present, the best supported position based on morphological traits recognizes the Zoraptera as Polyneopterous insects related to the web spinners of the order Embioptera. However, molecular analysis of 18's ribosomal DNA supports a close relationship with the superorder Dictyoptera. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The following cladogram, based on the molecular phylogeny of Wipfler et al. 2019, places Zoraptera as sister group of Dermaptera. Earwigs, Zoraptera and Dermaptera together form the sister group of the remaining Polyneoptera. 11. Polyneoptera. Zoraptera, angel insects, Dermaptera, earwigs. Plecoptera, stoneflies. Orthoptera, grasshoppers, crickets, katydids. Gryloblattodia, ice crawlers. Mantiphasmatodia, gladiators. Phasmatodia, stick insects. Embioptera, web spinners. Dictyoptera. Mantodia, mantises. Blatodia, cockroaches and termites. Classification. The Zoraptera are currently divided into 2 families, 4 subfamilies, 9 genera and a total of 51 species, some of which have not been yet described. 12, 13, 14. There are 11 extinct species known as of 2017. Many of the fossil species are known from Burmese amber. 15. Systematics. Extinct taxa. Zora. Behavior and ecology. Zorapterans live in small colonies beneath rotting wood, lacking in mouthparts able to tunnel into wood, but feeding on fungal spores and detritus. These insects can also hunt smaller arthropods like mites and columbolans. 18. Much of their time is spent grooming themselves or others. 19. Centrozoros gurney lives in colonies which range in size from a few dozen to several hundred individuals, but most often number about 30 individuals. The males are slightly larger than the females, and they fight for dominance. 20. When 2 colonies of Eusozoros hubbardi are brought together experimentally, there is no difference in behavior towards members of the new colony. Therefore, colonies in the wild might merge easily. Winged forms are rare. The males in most colonies establish a linear dominance hierarchy in which age or duration of colony membership is the prime factor determining dominance. Males appearing later in colonies are at the bottom of the hierarchy, regardless of their body size. By continually attacking other males, the dominant male monopolizes a harem of females. The members of this harem stay clumped together. There is a high correlation between rank and reproductive success of the males. 21-22. Latinosaurus barbari lack such a dominant structure but display complex courtship behavior including nuptial feeding. The males possess a cephalic gland that opens in the middle of their head. During courtship they secrete a fluid from this gland and offer it to the female. Acceptance of this droplet by the female acts as behavioral releaser and immediately leads to copulation. 18. In Spermasaurus impolitus, copulation does not occur, but fertilization is accomplished instead by transfer of a spermatophore from the male to the female. This 0.1 mm (0.0039 in) spermatophore contains a single giant sperm cell, which unravels to about the same length as the female herself, 3 mm (0.12 in). It is thought that this large sperm cell prevents fertilization by other males, by physically blocking the female's genital tract. 23-24. Effects on ecosystem. Zorapterans are thought to provide some important services to ecosystems. By consuming detritus, such as dead arthropods, they assist in decomposition and nutrient cycling. Beetle. Beetles are insects that form the order Coleoptera in the superorder Holometabola. Their front pair of wings are hardened into wing cases, elytra, distinguishing them from most other insects. The Coleoptera, with about 400,000 described species, is the largest of all orders, constituting almost 40% of described insects and 25% of all known animal species. 2 new species are discovered frequently, with estimates suggesting that there are between 0.9 and 2.1 million total species. However, the number of beetle species is challenged by the number of species in dipterans, flies, and hymenopterans, wasps. Found in almost every habitat except the sea and the polar regions, they interact with their ecosystems in several ways. Beetles often feed on plants and fungi, break down animal and plant debris, and eat other invertebrates. Some species are serious agricultural pests, such as the Colorado potato beetle, while others such as coccinellidæ, ladybirds or ladybugs, eat aphids, scale insects, thrips, and other plant-sucking insects that damage crops. Some others also have unusual characteristics, such as fireflies, which use a light-emitting organ for mating and communication purposes. Beetles typically have a particularly hard exoskeleton including the elytra, though some such as the robe beetles have very short elytra while blister beetles have softer elytra. The general anatomy of a beetle is quite uniform and typical of insects, although there are several examples of novelty, such as adaptations in water beetles which trap air bubbles under the elytra for use while diving. Beetles are holometabolans, which means that they undergo complete metamorphosis, with a series of conspicuous and relatively abrupt changes in body structure between hatching and becoming adult after a relatively immobile pupal stage. Some, such as stag beetles, have a marked sexual dimorphism, the males possessing enormously enlarged mandibles which they use to fight other males. Many beetles are aposematic, with bright colors and patterns warning of their toxicity, while others are harmless Batesian mimics of such insects. Many beetles, including those that live in sandy places, have effective camouflage. Beetles are prominent in human culture, from the sacred scarabs of ancient Egypt to beetling art and use as pets or fighting insects for entertainment and gambling. Many beetle groups are brightly and attractively colored, making them objects of collection and decorative displays. Over 300 species are used as food, mostly as larvae. Species widely consumed include mealworms and rhinoceros beetle larvae. However, the major impact of beetles on human life is as agricultural, forestry, and horticultural pests. Serious pest species include the boll weevil of cotton, the Colorado potato beetle, the coconut hispine beetle, the mountain pine beetle, and many others. Most beetles, however, do not cause economic damage, and some, such as numerous species of lady beetles, are beneficial by helping to control insect pests. Most beetles, however, do not cause economic damage, and some, such as numerous species of lady beetles, are beneficial by helping to control insect pests. Coleoptera at the State Museum of Natural History, Karlsruhe, Germany. The name of the taxonomic order, Coleoptera, comes from the Greek Coleopteros. Coleopteros given to the group by Aristotle for their elytra, hard and shield-like forewings, from koleos, sheath, and pteron, wing. The English name beetle comes from the Old English word beitla, little biter, related to beaten, to bite. 3, 4, leading to Middle English betel. 5. Another Old English name for beetle is seifer, schaefer, used in names such as cockchafer, from the Proto-Germanic *gebro, beetle, compare German Käfer, Dutch kever, Afrikaans kuur. 6. Beetles are by far the largest order of insects. The roughly 400,000 species make up about 40% of beetle. Temporal range, earliest Permian present. Clockwise from top left. Female golden stag beetle, Lamprima aurata, rhinoceros beetle, Megasoma sp. Long-nose weevil, Rhinotia hemistictus, cowboy beetle, Chondropiga dorsalis, and a species of Amblytellus. Scientific classification domain: Eukaryota kingdom, Animalia phylum, Arthropoda class, Insecta clade, Coleopterida. Order: Coleoptera. Linnaeus, 1758. Suborders: 1. Adephog. All insect species so far described, and about 25%. Of all animal species. 1, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 8 2015 study. Provided 4 independent estimates of the total number of beetle species, giving a mean estimate of some 1.5 million with a surprisingly narrow range, 12 spanning all 4 estimates from a minimum of 0.9 to a maximum of 2.1 million beetle species. The 4 estimates made use of host specificity relationships, 1.5 to 1.9 million, ratios with other taxa, 0.9 to 1.2 million, plant beetle ratios 1.2 to 1.3, and extrapolations based on body size by year of description, 1.7 to 2.1 million. 12-13. This immense diversity led the evolutionary biologist J.B.S. Haldane to quip, when some theologians asked him what could be inferred about the mind of the Christian God from the works of his creation, an inordinate fondness for beetles. 14. However, the ranking of beetles as most diverse has been challenged. Multiple studies posit that Diptera flies and or Hymenoptera sawflies, wasps, ants and bees may have more species. 15, 16, 17. Beetles are found in nearly all habitats, including freshwater and coastal habitats, wherever vegetative foliage is found, from trees and their bark to flowers, leaves, and underground near roots, even inside plants and galls, in every plant tissue, including dead or decaying ones. 18. Tropical forest canopies have a large and diverse fauna of beetles, 19 including Carabidae, 20 Chrysomelidae, 21 and Scarabiidae. 22. The heaviest beetle, indeed the heaviest insect stage, is the larva of the Goliath beetle, Goliathus goliatus, which can attain a mass of at least 115 grams, 4.1 ounces, and a length of 11.5 centimeters, 4.5 in. Adult male Goliath beetles are the heaviest beetle in its adult stage, weighing 70 to 100 g, 2.5-3.5 ounces, and measuring up to 11 centimeters, 4.3 in. 23. Adult elephant beetles, Megasoma elephas and Megasoma actian often reach 50 grams, 1.8 ounces, and 10 centimeters, 3.9 in. 24. The longest beetle is the Hercules beetle Dynastes hercules, with a maximum overall length of at least 16.7 centimeters, 6.6 in, including the very long pronodal horn. The smallest recorded beetle and the smallest free-living insect, as of 2015, is the featherwing beetle Cyticella musawacensis, which may measure as little as 325 micrometers in length. 25. See subgroups of the order Coleoptera. Titan beetle, Titanus gigantus, a tropical longhorn, is one of the largest and heaviest insects in the world. Cyticella musawacensis, the smallest known beetle, scale bar right, is 50 micrometers. Hercules beetle, Dynastes Hercules equatorianus, the longest of all beetles. Iridescent Protetia cuprea feeding on thistle. Evolution. Late Paleozoic and Triassic. Fossil and life restoration of Moravocolius permianus. Tschicardocolidae, from the early Permian of the Czech Republic, representative of the morphology of early beetles. The oldest known beetle is Calepsis, from the earliest Permian, Asilian, of Germany, around 295 million years ago. 26 early beetles from the Permian, which are collectively grouped into the Proto-Coleoptera, are thought to have been xylophagous, wood-eating, and wood-boring. Fossils from this time have been found in Siberia and Europe, for instance in the red slate fossil beds of Niedermichel near Mainz, Germany. 27 further fossils have been found in Obora, Czech Republic and Tschicharda in the Ural Mountains, Russia. 28. However, there are only a few fossils from North America before the Middle Permian, although both Asia and North America had been united to Euramerica. The first discoveries from North America made in the Wellington Formation of Oklahoma were published in 2005 and 2008. 29-30. The earliest members of modern beetle lineages appeared during the late Permian. In the Permian-Triassic extinction event at the end of the Permian, most Proto-Coleopteran lineages became extinct. Beetle diversity did not recover to pre-extinction levels until the Middle Triassic. 31. Jurassic. Beetle genera were mainly saprophages, detritivores, in the Permian and Triassic. During the Jurassic, herbivorous and then carnivorous genera became more common. In the Cenozoic, genera at all three trophic levels became far more numerous. During the Jurassic 210 to 145 Maya, there was a dramatic increase in the diversity of beetle families, 29 including the development and growth of carnivorous and herbivorous species. The Chrysomelidoidea diversified around the same time, feeding on a wide array of plant hosts from cycads and conifers to angiosperms. 32. Close to the Upper Jurassic, the Cupetidae decreased, but the diversity of the early plant-eating species increased. Most recent plant-eating beetles feed on flowering plants or angiosperms, whose success contributed to a doubling of plant-eating species during the Middle Jurassic. However, the increase of the number of beetle families during the Cretaceous does not correlate with the increase of the number of angiosperm species. 33. Around the same time, numerous primitive weevils, e.g. Curculeonoidea, and click beetles, e.g. Elateroidea, appeared. The first jewel beetles, e.g. Buprestid, are present, but they remained rare until the Cretaceous. 34, 35, 36. The first scarab beetles were not coprophagous but presumably fed on rotting wood with the help of fungus. They are an early example of a mutualistic relationship. There are more than 150 important fossil sites from the Jurassic, the majority in Eastern Europe and North Asia. Outstanding sites include Zonhofen in Upper Bavaria, Germany, 37 Karatau in South Kazakhstan, 38 the Yixian Formation in Liaoning, North China, 39, as well as the Zhulongshan Formation and further fossil sites in Mongolia. In North America there are only a few sites with fossil records of insects from the Jurassic, namely the shell limestone deposits in the Hartford Basin, the Deerfield Basin and the Newark Basin. 2940. Cretaceous. The Cretaceous saw the fragmenting of the southern landmass, with the opening of the southern Atlantic Ocean and the isolation of New Zealand, while South America, Antarctica, and Australia grew more distant. 32. The diversity of Cupetidae and Archostomata decreased considerably. Predatory ground beetles Carabidae and rove beetles Staphylinidae began to distribute into different patterns. The Carabidae predominantly occurred in the warm regions, while the Staphylinidae and click beetles Elateridae preferred temperate climates. Likewise, predatory species of Claroidea and Cucujoidea hunted their prey under the bark of trees together with the jewel beetles Buprestid. The diversity of jewel beetles increased rapidly, as they were the primary consumers of wood. 41. While longhorn beetles Cerambicidae were rather rare, their diversity increased only towards the end of the Upper Cretaceous. 29. The first coprophagous beetles are from the Upper Cretaceous. 42. And may have lived on the excrement of herbivorous dinosaurs. 43. The first species where both larvae and adults are adapted to an aquatic lifestyle are found. Whirligic beetles Gyrinidae were moderately diverse, although other early beetles, e.g. Didicidae, were less, with the most widespread being the species of Copticlavidae, which preyed on aquatic fly larvae. 29. A 2020 review of the paleoecological interpretations of fossil beetles from Cretaceous ambers has suggested that Saproxylicity was the most common feeding strategy, with fungivorous species in particular appearing to dominate. 44. Many fossil sites worldwide contain beetles from the Cretaceous. Most are in Europe and Asia and belong to the temperate climate zone during the Cretaceous. 39. Lower Cretaceous sites include the Crotto fossil beds in the Araripe Basin in the Sierra, North Brazil, as well as overlying Santana Formation. The latter was near the equator at that time. In Spain, important sites are near Monsic and Las Hoyas. In Australia, the Coonwarra fossil beds of the Corumburra Group, South Gippsland, Victoria, are noteworthy. Major sites from the Upper Cretaceous include Kzyl Jar in South Kazakhstan and Arkagala in Russia. 29. Cenozoic. Fossil Buprestid beetle from the Eocene 50 Maya, Messel pit, which retains its structural color. 45. Beetle fossils are abundant in the Cenozoic. By the Quaternary up to 1.6 Maya, fossil species are identical to living ones, while from the late Miocene 5.7 Maya, the fossils are still so close to modern forms that they are most likely the ancestors of living species. The large oscillations in climate during the Quaternary cause beetles to change their geographic distributions so much that current location gives little clue to the biogeographical history of a species. It is evident that geographic isolation of populations must often have been broken as insects moved under the influence of changing climate, causing mixing of gene pools, rapid evolution, and extinctions, especially in middle latitudes. It is evident that geographic isolation of populations must often have been broken as insects moved under the influence of changing climate, causing mixing of gene pools, rapid evolution, and extinctions, especially in middle latitudes. 46. Phylogeny. The very large number of beetle species poses special problems for classification. Some families contain tens of thousands of species, and need to be divided into subfamilies and tribes. Polyphaga is the largest suborder, containing more than 300,000 described species in more than 170 families, including rove beetles, Staphylinidae, scarab beetles, Scarabidae, blister beetles, Meloidae, stag beetles, Lucanidae, and true weevils, Curculionidae. 1047. These polyphagan beetle groups can be identified by the presence of cervical sclerites, hardened parts of the head used as points of attachment for muscles, absent in the other suborders. 48. Adephaga contains about 10 families of largely predatory beetles, includes ground beetles Carabidae, water beetles Didicidae, and whirligic beetles Gyrinidae. In these insects, the testes are tubular and the first abdominal sternum, a plate of the exoskeleton, is divided by the hind coxae, the basal joints of the beetle's legs. 49. Archostomata contains 4 families of mainly wood-eating beetles, including reticulated beetles Cupetidae and the telephone pole beetle. 50. The archostomata have an exposed plate called the metatrochanton in front of the basal segment or coxa of the hind leg. 51. Myxophaga contains about 65 described species in 4 families, mostly very small, including Hydroscaphidae and the genus Spharius. 52. The myxophagan beetles are small and mostly alga feeders. Their mouthparts are characteristic in lacking galleae and having a mobile tooth on their left mandible. 53. The consistency of beetle morphology, in particular their possession of elytra, has long suggested that Coleoptera is monophyletic, though there have been doubts about the arrangement of the suborders, namely the Adephaga, Archostomata, The consistency of beetle morphology, in particular their possession of elytra, has long suggested that Coleoptera is monophyletic, though there have been doubts about the arrangement of the suborders, namely the Adephaga, Archostomata, Myxophaga and Polyphaga within that clade. 54, 32, 55, 56, 57. The twisted wing parasites, Strepsiptera, are thought to be a sister group to the beetles, having split from them in the early Permian. 56, 58, 59, 60. Molecular phylogenetic analysis confirms that the Coleoptera are monophyletic. Duane McKenna et al. 2015 used 8 nuclear genes for 367 species from 172 of 183 Coleopteran families. They split the Adaphaga into two clades, Hydratephaga and Guetaphaga, broke up the Cucujoidea into three clades, and placed the Limexilloidea within the Tenebrionoidea. The Polyphaga appear to date from the Triassic. Most extant beetle families appear to have arisen in the Cretaceous. 60. The cladogram is based on McKenna, 2015. 60. The number of species in each group, mainly superfamilies, is shown in parentheses, and boldface if over 10,000. 61. English common names are given where possible. Dates of origin of major groups are shown in italics in millions of years ago, Maya. 61. Coleoptera. Nosodendridae, 70. A. Head. B. Thorax. C. Abdomen. Beetle body structure, using cockchafer. A. Head. B. Thorax. C. Abdomen. 1. Antenna. 2. Compound eye. 3. Femur. 4. Elytron wing cover. 5. Tibia. 6. Tarsus. 7. Claws. 8. Mouthparts. 9. Prothorax. 10. Mesothorax. 11. Metathorax. 12. Abdominal sternites. 13. Pygidium. Beetles are generally characterized by a particularly hard exoskeleton and hard forewings, elytra, not usable for flying. Almost all beetles have mandibles that move in a horizontal plane. The mouthparts are rarely suctorial, though they are sometimes reduced. The maxillae always bear palps. The antennae usually have 11 or fewer segments, except in some groups like the Cerambicidae, longhorn beetles, and the Rhipoceridae, cicada parasite beetles. The coxae of the legs are usually located recessed within a coxal cavity. The genitalic structures are telescoped into the last abdominal segment in all extant beetles. Beetle larvae can often be confused with those of other holometabolan groups. 51. The beetle's exoskeleton is made up of numerous plates, called sclerites, separated by thin sutures. This design provides armored defenses while maintaining external morphology. Flexibility. The general anatomy of a beetle is quite uniform, although specific organs and appendages vary greatly in appearance and function between the many families in the order. Like all insects, beetles' bodies are divided into three sections: the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. 8. Because there are so many species, identification is quite difficult, and relies on attributes including the shape of the antennae, the tarsal formulae, and shapes of these small segments on the legs, the mouthparts, and the ventral plates, sterna, pleura, coxae. In many species, accurate identification can only be made by examination of the unique male genitalic structures. 62. Head. Front view of the head of Lamia texter. The head, having mouthparts projecting forward or sometimes downturned, is usually heavily sclerotized and is sometimes very large. 7. The eyes are compound and may display remarkable adaptability, as in the case of the aquatic whirligig beetles, Gyrinidae, where they are split to allow a view both above and below the waterline. A few longhorn beetles, Cerambicidae, and weevils as well as some fireflies, Ragathalmidae, 63, have divided eyes, while many have eyes that are notched, and a few have ocelli, small, simple eyes usually farther back on the head, on the vertex. These are more common in larvae than in adults. 64. The anatomical organization of the compound eyes may be modified and depends on whether a species is primarily crepuscular, or diurnally or nocturnally active. 65. Ocelli are found in the adult carpet beetle, as a single central ocellus in Dermestidae, some rogue beetles, Omelinae, and the Darodontidae. 64. Polyphylla fullo has distinctive fan-like antennae, one of several distinct forms for the appendages among beetles. Beetle antennae are primarily organs of sensory perception and can detect motion, odor and chemical substances. 66. But may also be used to physically feel a beetle's environment. Beetle families may use antennae in different ways. For example, when moving quickly, tiger beetles may not be able to see very well and instead hold their antennae rigidly in front of them in order to avoid obstacles. 67. Certain Cerambicidae use antennae to balance, and blister beetles may use them for grasping. Some aquatic beetle species may use antennae for gathering air and passing it under the body whilst submerged. Equally, some families use antennae during mating, and a few species use them for defense. In the Cerambicid Onychoceras albatarsus, the antennae have venom-injecting structures used in defense, which is unique among arthropods. 68. Antennae vary greatly in form, sometimes between the sexes, but are often similar within any given family. Antennae may be clubbed, thread-like, angled, shaped like a string of beads, comb-like either on one side or both, bipectinate, or toothed. The physical variation of antennae is important for the identification of many beetle groups. The Curculionidae have elbowed or geniculate antennae. Feather-like flabellate antennae are a restricted form found in the Rhipoceridae and a few other families. The Sylphidae have a capitate antennae with a spherical head at the tip. The Scarabaeidae typically have limellate antennae with the terminal segments extended into long flat structures stacked together. The Carabidae typically have thread-like antennae. The antennae arises between the eye and the mandibles, and in the Tenebrionidae, the antennae rise in front of a notch that breaks the usually circular outline of the compound eye. They are segmented and usually consist of 11 parts. The first part is called the scape and the second part is the pedicel. The other segments are jointly called the flagellum. 66, 69, 70. Beetles have mouthparts like those of grasshoppers. The mandibles appear as large pincers on the front of some beetles. The mandibles are a pair of hard, often tooth-like structures that move horizontally to grasp, crush, or cut food or enemies. See defense, below. Two pairs of finger-like appendages, the maxillary and labial palpi, are found around the mouth in most beetles, serving to move food into the mouth. In many species, the mandibles are sexually dimorphic, with those of the males enlarged enormously compared with those of females of the same species. 7. Thorax. The thorax is segmented into the two discernible parts, the pro- and pterothorax. The pterothorax is the fused meso- and metathorax, which are commonly separated in other insect species, although flexibly articulate from the prothorax. When viewed from below, the thorax is that part from which all three pairs of legs and both pairs of wings arise. The abdomen is everything posterior to the thorax. 8. When viewed from above, most beetles appear to have three clear sections, but this is deceptive. On the beetle's upper surface, the middle section is a hard plate called the pronotum, which is only the front part of the thorax. The back part of the thorax is concealed by the beetle's wings. This further segmentation is usually best seen on the abdomen. Acilius sulcatus, a diving beetle with hind legs adapted as swimming limbs. Legs. The multisegmented legs end in 2 to 5 small segments called tarsi. Like many other insect orders, beetles have claws, usually one pair, on the end of the last tarsal segment of each leg. While most beetles use their legs for walking, legs have been variously adapted for other uses. Aquatic beetles including the Didicidae, diving beetles, Haloplidae, and many species of Hydrophilidae, the legs, often the last pair, are modified for swimming, typically with rows of long hairs. Male diving beetles have suctorial cups on their forelegs that they use to grasp females. 71. Other beetles have fossorial legs widened and often spined for digging. Species with such adaptations are found among the scarabs, ground beetles, and clown beetles, Hysteridae. The hind legs of some beetles, such as flea beetles within Chrysomelidae, and flea weevils within Curculionidae, have enlarged femurs that help them leap. 72. Wings. Checkered beetle Trichodes alvarius taking off, showing the hard elytra, forewings adapted as wing cases, held stiffly away from the flight wings. The forewings of beetles are not used for flight, but form elytra which cover the hind part of the body and protect the hindwings. The elytra are usually hard shell-like structures which must be raised to allow the hindwings to move for flight. 73. However, in the soldier beetles Cantharidae, the elytra are soft, earning this family the name of leatherwings. 74. Other soft-winged beetles include the net-winged beetle Coleoptera discrepans, which has brittle wings that rupture easily in order to release chemicals for defense. 75. Beetles' flight wings are crossed with veins and are folded after landing, often along these veins, and stored below the elytra. A fold jugum of the membrane at the base of each wing is characteristic. 73. Some beetles have lost the ability to fly. These include some ground beetles Carabidae, and some true weevils Curculionidae, as well as desertand cave-dwelling species of other families. Many have the two elytra fused together, forming a solid shield over the abdomen. In a few families, both the ability to fly and the elytra have been lost, as in the glowworms Phengodidae, where the females resemble larvae throughout their lives. 76. The presence of elytra and wings does not always indicate that the beetle will fly. For example, the tansy beetle walks between habitats despite being physically capable of flight. 77. Abdomen. The abdomen is the section behind the metathorax, made up of a series of rings, each with a hole for breathing and respiration, called a spiracle, composing 3 different segmented sclerites, the tergum, pleura, and the sternum. The tergum in almost all species is membranous, or usually soft and concealed by the wings and elytra when not in flight. The pleura are usually small or hidden in some species, with each pleuron having a single spiracle. The sternum is the most widely visible part of the abdomen, being a more or less sclerotized segment. The abdomen itself does not have any appendages, but some, for example, Mordelidae, have articulating sternal lobes. 78. Anatomy and physiology. A beetle's body systems. Digestive system. The digestive system of beetles is primarily adapted for a herbivorous diet. Digestion takes place mostly in the anterior midgut, although in predatory groups like the Carabidae, most digestion occurs in the crop by means of midgut enzymes. In the Elateridae, the larvae are liquid feeders that extraorally digest their food by secreting enzymes. 8. The alimentary canal basically consists of a short, narrow pharynx, a widened expansion, the crop, and a poorly developed gizzard. This is followed by the midgut, that varies in dimensions between species, with a large amount of cecum, and the hindgut, with varying lengths. There are typically 4 to 6 Malpighian tubules. 7. Nervous system. The nervous system in beetles contains all the types found in insects, varying between different species, from 3 thoracic and 7 or 8 abdominal ganglia which can be distinguished to that in which all the thoracic and abdominal ganglia are fused to form a composite structure. 8. Respiratory system. Didiscus. Spiracles, right, on upper side of abdomen. Normally covered by the elytra, are in contact with an air bubble when the beetle dives. Like most insects, beetles inhale air, for the oxygen it contains, and exhale carbon dioxide, via a tracheal system. Air enters the body through spiracles, and circulates within the hemocoel in a system of tracheae and tracheoles, through whose walls the gases can diffuse. 8. Diving beetles, such as the Didicidae, carry a bubble of air with them when they dive. Such a bubble may be contained under the elytra or against the body by specialized hydrophobic hairs. The bubble covers at least some of the spiracles, permitting air to enter the tracheae. 8. The function of the bubble is not only to contain a store of air but to act as a physical gill. The air that it traps is in contact with oxygenated water, so as the animal's consumption depletes the oxygen in the bubble, more oxygen can diffuse in to replenish it. 79. Carbon dioxide is more soluble in water than either oxygen or nitrogen, so it readily diffuses out faster than in. Nitrogen is the most plentiful gas in the bubble, and the least soluble, so it constitutes a relatively static component of the bubble and acts as a stable medium for respiratory gases to accumulate in and pass through. Occasional visits to the surface are sufficient for the beetle to re-establish the constitution of the bubble. 80. Circulatory system. Like other insects, beetles have open circulatory systems, based on hemolymph rather than blood. As in other insects, a segmented tube-like heart is attached to the dorsal wall of the hemocoel. It has paired inlets or ostia at intervals down its length, and circulates the hemolymph from the main cavity of the hemocoel and out through the anterior cavity in the head. 81. Specialized organs. Different glands are specialized for different pheromones to attract mates. Pheromones from species of Rutellinae are produced from epithelial cells lining the inner surface of the apical abdominal segments. Amino acid-based pheromones of Melilondinae are produced from eversible glands on the abdominal apex. Other species produce different types of pheromones. Dermastids produce esters, and species of Elateridae produce fatty acid-derived aldehydes and acetates. 8. To attract a mate, fireflies Lampyridae use modified fat body cells with transparent surfaces backed with reflective uric acid crystals to produce light by bioluminescence. Light production is highly efficient, by oxidation of luciferin catalyzed by enzymes luciferases, in the presence of adenosine triphosphate ATP, and oxygen, producing oxyluciferin, carbon dioxide, and light. 8. Tympanal organs or hearing organs consist of a membrane tympanum, stretched across a frame backed by an air sac and associated sensory neurons, are found in two families. 82. Several species of the genus Cicindela carabidae have hearing organs on the dorsal surfaces of their first abdominal segments beneath the wings. Two tribes in the Dynastinae within the Scarabaeidae have hearing organs just beneath their pronodal shields or neck membranes. Both families are sensitive to ultrasonic frequencies, with strong evidence indicating they function to detect the presence of bats by their ultrasonic echolocation. 8. Reproduction and development. Beetles are members of the superorder Holometabola, and accordingly most of them undergo complete metamorphosis. The typical form of metamorphosis in beetles passes through four main stages: the egg, the larva, the pupa, and the imago or adult. 83. The larvae are commonly called grubs and the pupa sometimes is called the chrysalis. In some species, the pupa may be enclosed in a cocoon constructed by the larva towards the end of its final instar. Some beetles, such as typical members of the families Meloidae and Rhipiphoridae, go further, undergoing hypermetamorphosis in which the first instar takes the form of a triungulin. 84. Mating. Punctate flower chafers Neorhina punctata, Scarabaeidae mating. Some beetles have intricate mating behavior. Pheromone communication is often important in locating a mate. Different species use different pheromones. Scarab beetles such as the Rutellinae use pheromones derived from fatty acid synthesis and others use pheromones from organic compounds, while other scarabs such as the Melilondinae use amino acids and terpenoids. Another way beetles find mates is seen in the fireflies Lampyridae, which are bioluminescent, with abdominal light-producing organs. The males and females engage in a complex dialogue before mating. Each species has a unique combination of flight patterns, duration, composition, and intensity of the light produced. 8. Before mating, males and females may stridulate, or vibrate the objects they are on. In the Meloidae, the male climbs onto the dorsum of the female and strokes his antennae on her head, palps, and antennae. In Eupompha, the male draws his antennae along his longitudinal vertex. They may not mate at all if they do not perform the precopulatory ritual. 8. This mating behavior may be different amongst dispersed populations of the same species. For example, the mating of a Russian population of tansy beetle Chrysalina graminis is preceded by an elaborate ritual involving the male tapping the female's eyes, pronotum and antennae with its antennae, which is not evident in the population of this species in the United Kingdom. 85. In another example, the intromittent organ of male thistle tortoise beetles is a long, tube-like structure called the flagellum which is thin and curved. When not in use, the flagellum is stored inside the abdomen of the male and can extend out to be longer than the male when needed. During mating, this organ bends to the complex shape of the female reproductive organ, which includes a coiled duct that the male must penetrate with the organ. Furthermore, these physical properties of the thistle tortoise beetle have been studied because the ability of a thin, flexible structure to harden without buckling or rupturing is mechanically challenging and may have important implications for the development of microscopic catheters in modern medicine. 86. Competition can play a part in the mating rituals of species such as burying beetles, Nicrophorus, the insects fighting to determine which can mate. Many male beetles mating. Punctate flower chafers Neorhina punctata, Scarabaeidae mating. Some beetles have intricate mating behavior. Pheromone communication is often important in locating a mate. Different species use different pheromones. Scarab beetles such as the Rutellinae use pheromones derived from fatty acid synthesis and others use pheromones from organic compounds, while other scarabs such as the Melilondinae use amino acids and terpenoids. Another way beetles find mates is seen in the fireflies Lampyridae, which are bioluminescent, with abdominal light-producing organs. The males and females engage in a complex dialogue before mating. Each species has a unique combination of flight patterns, duration, composition, and intensity of the light produced. 8. Before mating, males and females may stridulate, or vibrate the objects they are on. In the Meloidae, the male climbs onto the dorsum of the female and strokes his antennae on her head, palps, and antennae. In Eupompha, the male draws his antennae along his longitudinal vertex. They may not mate at all if they do not perform the precopulatory ritual. 8. This mating behavior may be different amongst dispersed populations of the same species. For example, the mating of a Russian population of tansy beetle Chrysalina graminis is preceded by an elaborate ritual involving the male tapping the female's eyes, pronotum and antennae with its antennae, which is not evident in the population of this species in the United Kingdom.